My phone was ringing and I was in bed. I didn't move my body as I knew it was too early in the morning. This was a sea day and I never did early starts on a sea day. The phone rang out, then it started again. I fell out of bed and crawled over to the phone and picked up. It was Newport. She sounded trash still and slurred down the phone. "I'm coming to yours. I need your help." The phone went dead. I looked at the time. It was 6:30. At this point in my life, my body didn't know that 6:30 existed. I'd only been to bed 2 hours later. I sat on the bed and lit a cigarette waiting for Newport to turn up. There was a bang at the door. I went over and opened up. And Newport was standing there holding her hands out. She came inside. "I was playing with super glue and it's all over my hands. Help me get it off." I grabbed her by the wrist and took her to the bathroom. I turned the taps on and began to douse her hands with cold water. Her thumb and thirsty fingers both were nearly stuck rock solid. "Damn," I said. "Don't attempt to separate them just yet, and don't put any pressure on. Just keep your hands under the water and wait here." I left the bathroom, then walked over to my stash and picked up a few bottles of rum and had a look at the strength. No, none of the everyday bottles were strong enough. Then I picked up the last quarter of my rocket fuel rum, the dreaded 151 proof Antiguan rum. I thought to myself that if this can degrease ball bearings, then this is strong enough to melt superglue. I took the bottle to the bathroom and turned the taps off. I uncapped the 151 and I tipped it into Newport's hands. "Rotate your thumbs and fingers and keep rotating them." Newport did as she was told and her thumbs are coming loose from her fingers. I took a swig from the 151 and tipped another load onto her hands. I'd nearly run out of the good stuff. I'd only get one more dowsing and it would be gone. Newport's fingers and thumbs were now free and her hands looked to right state. Her hands were still covered in clumps of dry superglue. "My boss is going to have a pop at me if she sees the state of my hands. What am I going to do?" cried Newport. "Wait here," I said. "I need to get some bits from the theatre. In the meantime, keep your hands in the sink." I went back to my stash and pulled out my unopened bottle of white rum from St. Martin. I returned to the bathroom and placed the plug into the sink. I opened up the bottle of white rum and tipped it all into the sink, then held Newport's hands down the basin. "Don't take your hands out," I said. As I flung on some trousers, I left my cabin barefoot and to go backstage. I found myself into the stage manager's locker and nicked a handful of scowling pads and J-cloths, and then returned to my cabin. I went back to the bathroom and Newport still had her hands in the sink. I dropped a scowling pad into the rum-filled sink, pulled out Newport's left hand and began to scrub hard. "You're hurting me," said Newport. "Babes, that's the only way you're going to get that shit off your hands. Just grin and bear it," I said as I continued to scrub hard. The glue was coming off, but at a slow rate. After about 5 minutes of intense scrubbing, it felt like I had wanker's whiplash, so I took a break. I slid Newport's hand back into the sink with the other hand. I pulled out a cigarette and lit it, making sure I was stood away from the sink of inflammable liquid. The cigarette didn't last long. I stubbed it out and went back over to the sink and began to furiously scrub the living shit out of Newport's right hand. The glue was coming off slowly but surely. Eventually most of the glue came off and I was relieved as much as Newport was. She no longer feared getting busted. But we had a new problem: how to get rid of the smell of rum, as her hands were soaking in a litre of paint thinner grade white rum. Her skin, or shall we say what was left of her skin, had absorbed as much of it as Newport smelt flammable. Newport walked into my main section cabin and all I could smell was the rum. We would need to correct this before she left to go to work, and we were fast running out of time. Newport began to panic, and this was not helped with the fact that I was still half asleep and rottenly hungover. I looked around my cabin but couldn't find anything to mask the smell. Then I clapped eyes on the solution. I walked over to my desk and picked up a Monte Cristo Edmondo cigar. This was my last one, as even in the Caribbean they are quite pricey. The cigar cost $20 and I really didn't want to use it, but I didn't see any other choice. Using my work knife, I chipped at the smoking end and then lit it. The exquisite taste of this cigar was going down nicely. Every exhale was blown into Newport's closed hands. Newport looked at the time. She had to leave my cabin in 10 minutes flat just to be able to make the C-Day morning meeting. I increased the rate of consumption and billowed as much cigar smoke over Newport's hands. My cabin was now filling up with beautiful cigar smoke, and I moved us into the bathroom to avoid setting off the smoke alarm. Newport sniffed her hands and we couldn't smell the rum anymore. It was a job well done. She had the odd patch of super glue on her hands, but she could work on that throughout the day with an hour foul. Newport kissed me goodbye and left. I was left in my cabin. wide awake at nearly 7:30 in the morning, with 3/4 of a beautiful cigar. If I were to stub it out and then light it up later, the flavour would be ruined. This was somewhat of a dilemma. Do I smoke it or stub it and waste the rest of this expensive cigar? I mulled it over for a few minutes whilst puffing on this tasty cigar. Then I cracked open a tin of beer. Fuck it. It would be called breakfast.